Welcome to CCHW, Christ Church of the Holy Word, and our program, Things They Didn't Teach You in Church. We are wrapping up our series on the 4 hidden dynasties of the Bible that Satan will take control of in these end times. But before we continue with our postscripts, I'd like to remind you that if you find yourself in a position where your employer is requiring you to get vaccinated for the COVID-19 virus, and you have an ethical or a religious objection to being forced to take these shots, we here at CCHW have developed a letter requesting a religious exemption from these forced vaccination mandates. And if you will contact us through our website content page at christchurchoftheholyword.com, or you can send a request to CCHW, P.O. Box 1609, Parker, Arizona, 85344. If you do that, I will send you a personalized letter addressed to you and signed by me requesting an exemption from all the vaccine mandates on a religious basis. You can see a sample of the letter on our website, christchurchoftheholyword.com, and if you include a self-addressed stamped envelope along with your request, I'll tell you we would greatly appreciate it because it will help us defer some of the expenses of doing this project. Now, let's get back to the postscripts on the 4 hidden dynasties, their enforcer, and their press agent. Hello, welcome back to our presentation. This program that we run here on the CCHW network, Christ Church of the Holy Word. It's a series that we're running, a program that we're running, Things They Didn't Teach You in Church. And we're now wrapping up our series that we've been running for several months now on the hidden dynasties of the Bible, which Satan is going to take control of. His people already have a foothold in it, but when Satan shows up, he'll take control of all 4 of the hidden dynasties, as well as being well advertised and pushed by the enforcer and the press agent of the dynasties. And they will help him usher in the final deception that's going to be launched on the people here on earth, and eventually that's going to lead up to the return of Christ. So with that all in mind, let's move on to our next postscript and do an update on the 2nd hidden dynasty of politics. Now, let me tell you before we get going, politics right now is crazy. We're only going to touch a little bit on it, but as time goes by, we're going to come back and visit politics quite often and look at what's going on with politics in light of biblical prophecy and what is going on with the final days of this earth age. But first, there's something that's going on right now that illustrates just how crazy things are getting in the areas where education in this country meets politics. We just did education. We're moving into politics. Right here is where they come together, and I'd like to share that with you. At this time, in the Phoenix area, Phoenix, Arizona, militant students at Arizona State University, right here in my home state of Arizona, are demanding that Kyle Rittenhouse, who was just recently found not guilty and completely exonerated from all the charges that they lodged against him in his recent trial. He was found totally not guilty. These ASU students want him banned from attending classes at the university. How crazy is that? Today, the world of higher education, which used to be the protector of free speech, and a place where you could get a second and third chance for those people that really wanted to better their lives and become better citizens, it's now become a cesspool of wokeism trying to appease the crazy liberal far left. As we look at this second hidden dynasty of politics, it seems that in this world of political confusion around us, if you're not talking about Afghanistan and the debacle that took place there, or if you're talking about the government spending trillions of dollars we don't have, or you're talking about tens of thousands of refugees invading our country over our southern border. If you're not talking about one of those things or a couple other things that we're going to touch on too, you're probably talking about the vaccination madness going on in this country. Look at that. We're right back at the China flu and these mandated vaccines. Don't worry, I'm not going to spend much time on it tonight. We've already covered it pretty good. But I want to point out to you that the hidden dynasty of education, along with the hidden dynasty of politics, is pushing vaccine mandates in our government schools. And they've also been emboldened by politicians like Gavin Newsom in California, who are trying to force entire populations of their state, government and private industry, to get poked. And the federal government itself has mandated all armed forces service members, along with other federal employees, to get the COVID flu shot. Thankfully, it looks like the court system in this country hasn't completely lost their mind like the far left has, and the courts are striking down these mandates in several places. It seems like everything is rolled together these days, politically, economically, with education pushing this and that, and the whole world out there is watching the madness going on. And many are expecting the same things and are actually beginning to experience some of the same things in their own countries. President Joe Biden has now announced that he plans to enforce vaccination mandates across the country if he can get away with it. It seems to me so ironic that in this time of panic on the left over the possibility of some states actually outlawing an abortion if a fetus's heartbeat can be detected, the child's heartbeat, and protesters are out there all over the country chanting at demonstrations, "It's my body, it's my choice." And they've been chanting that for quite a while, as you know. At the same time, all this is happening, the government is claiming it has authority to inject any and all U.S. citizens with a man-made, unproven therapeutic, which is supposed to protect people from a virus that killed less people last year than obesity did in this particular country. Actually, it's worldwide, but we're concentrating on the U.S. And the vaccinations themselves, they seem to be life-threatening to certain populations in the world. Additionally, several studies are now showing that the vaccine's protection wears off very quickly, sometimes in less than 6 months. And at the same time, the representatives of our government are completely ignoring the huge number of people, perhaps 90 million people in this country, yours truly included, that have obtained natural immunity from contracting the China plague and surviving it. Your chances of contracting the disease after having it once is way less than those that have been vaccinated. In fact, we've seen an epidemic countrywide lately of fully vaccinated people getting it again. But they are ignoring that population and are pushing for everyone, vaccinated or not, to get poked again. Even those people with natural immunity. Now, we've been asking for months why this huge population of people, which is, by the way, it's getting bigger and bigger every day, the non-vaccinated with natural immunity, they are being told that they should be vaccinated too. It makes no scientific sense at all, none. On September 9th, 2021, Dr. Fauci was finally asked about this question on public television. Not by a member of media, oh no. They couldn't ask a straight question these days if their life depended on it. But the question was asked by another doctor. And you'll never guess what Fauci said. He said he didn't know about natural immunity, but that it was a good question that they should probably look into. What? We are over a year and a half into this so-called pandemic. We know over 90 million Americans alone, have had the China plague and survived. We also know that natural immunity that you then have is more than 25 times more effective protecting people than the vaccine is. And Fauci doesn't know, but he thinks we should look into it? Friends, this is absurd. And yet many people out there are still walking around in a daze, and they aren't sure that something is all messed up about this whole COVID-19 thing. Friends, it's time people wake up. The hour's getting late. We need to put a stop to these forced vaccinations right now. This is the biggest, I believe, this is the biggest political scandal of our lifetimes. And believe me, we've had some big ones just over the past few years. The truth of the matter is that the hidden dynasty of politics doesn't want COVID to go away because it creates fear in the people, which they can use to control the masses. Why else would they let hundreds of thousands of illegal aliens come into this country across our southern border, knowing that many of them are infected with COVID and that they're going to be spreading the virus throughout the country? I mean, they're busing them to all parts of the country. You don't think that's going to spread the virus? And then on top of that, they don't even try to vaccinate them when they're coming across, or even test them to see if they test positive for the China virus. Why would that be happening? And then, for some reason, they make sure we all know about it. They spread the word all over the place. That's on the news. Friends, this is right out of Alinsky's Rules for Radicals. Remember, we covered them. It's Rule 9. Do you remember Rule 9, what it says? Rule 9 of Alinsky's Rules for Radicals of taking over governments and those kind of things, it states that the threat that's presented is usually more terrifying than the thing itself. Friends, we're being manipulated. They are willing, think about this, they're willing to pay people to get jabbed. They're willing to scare you to death in order to get you to get vaccinated. They're willing to lie to you day in and day out, if that's what it takes, to get you to let them put that needle in your arm. And now, they're going after our children. I mean, even though children are the least at risk from the virus of any population in this country, they want to vaccinate them all. And at the same time, reports are coming from concerned medical professionals saying that they're seeing an increase of 7 times in the number of teenage boys getting myocarditis. Now, according to a report, and we're going to put this on the screen for you, but this report comes from the CDC. Remember the CDC, the Center for Disease Control. This report from them came out, and what they're saying is that since April of 2021, and I quote, reported cases have occurred predominantly in male adolescents and young adults 16 years of age and older. Onset was typically within several days after mRNA COVID-19 vaccinations, and cases have occurred more often after the second dose than the first dose. And then the report goes on to say, we'll put it up for you on the screen, and I quote, CDC and its partners are investigating these reports of myocarditis and pericarditis following mRNA COVID-19 vaccination. Well, thanks a lot for that one, CDC. I mean, is anybody paying attention out there? Sometimes it doesn't seem like it. Listen, here's the facts, folks. Myocarditis is the inflammation of the heart muscle inside the heart. And pericarditis is inflammation of the lining outside the heart. These diseases are very, very uncommon in young people. These diseases are usually contracted by middle-aged men who have a long history of illegal drug use like cocaine, or they develop in middle-aged men that have been taking medicines to treat cancer or epilepsy. That's who normally gets these diseases. And now our young men are getting them. Even if you're young male, if you have a son, a grandson, a nephew, even friends, if they don't develop complications right when they first get vaccinated, like many of these cases are showing, how do we know what's going to happen as time goes on? Friends, this is very disturbing. And yet the CDC and the Biden administration are telling us, oh, don't worry. There's nothing to worry about. It's a very small number. Not really. This doesn't happen, friends. And you go tell that to the parents of these kids that are contracting these diseases of the heart, killing some of them. It's got to be devastating. Can you even imagine? And believe me, the number of these cases is growing out there. They aren't reporting on it, but they're growing. I believe one of the purposes of this orchestrated pandemic has always been to create fear and chaos. I believe that's what the lockdowns were all about, and I'm afraid we're going to see them come again in some parts of this country. Chaos is good for politicians that work for the hidden dynasty of politics. You know why? Because it gives them power. They sell themselves to the American public as the ones that can fix things. So people begin to turn control over to them when these politicians have actually sold themselves out to big pharma. That's exactly what the lockdowns were about, forcing people into isolation so they had to depend on government, along with all of their cronies, government's cronies like Amazon, Walmart, big pharma companies. Can you think of anything other than this vaccination thing that's going on in the world that might create chaos in the world? Well, the first thing that comes to my mind is war and terrorism. I mean, war and terrorism have been politicized over the years, that's for sure. And the hidden dynasty of politics wants chaos because that allows them control. Chaos and fear of what's to come causes people, as I've said, to become fearful, terribly afraid. And because they are in this state of fear, they're willing to do things that they would otherwise not even consider doing, like giving up their rights, or like allowing the government to shoot man-made, untested things into their bodies. The world had been at peace, and terrorism had been stopped in its tracks ever since Trump decimated ISIS. We had already accomplished everything that we were going to accomplish in Afghanistan, and that was after like the first 3 years we were there. Over the past decade, things seem to be running smoother and smoother and smoother. When ISIS was destroyed, everything got quiet. So let me ask you a question. I wonder if you've ever really thought about this. Why did we get out of Afghanistan when we did? Have you ever asked yourself that? Especially in the way that we got out, friends. We removed our troops in the middle of the night, and we left thousands upon thousands of Afghans that had helped us during the time that we were there, and we left them there possibly to die. We know, we have videos of many of them being beheaded in the streets. And along with that, we endangered hundreds, if not thousands, of American lives by leaving them behind. Why would we do something like that? If getting out like that isn't planned and done that way for a particular reason, then it was a disgrace and an indictment of the leadership of our armed forces and the Biden administration in general. Folks, the generals over the past couple of decades have become political puppets of the deep state, and they're beholden to the globalist movement that's trying to take over not just this country, but the entire world. It is the one world political system being constructed right now, right before our eyes. Are you paying attention? The people in charge had to know that getting out of Afghanistan the way that we did would bring thousands of terrorists to our shores. It was happening before. It's going to happen again. They opened the borders. There's thousands and thousands and thousands of people coming across. Terrorists are among them. You know that. And I believe it's part of the plan. Chaos and confusion. One of the big questions in my mind today is just what influence did NATO have in keeping the war going on so long? And then, what part did they play in the method or the lack of method and planning that was used to exit the country of Afghanistan? Did you know that through NATO, the UN, the United States has given control of so many things of national interest over to foreigners, and it's frightening, friends. Here's another little fact I bet you don't know. The United States of America provides financial aid. I'm going to put this on the screen for you. The U.S. provides financial aid to 184 of the 193 countries that are in the UN. That amounts to 96% of all the countries in that organization. And us being one of the few that don't get aid from us isn't even factored into that figure. And now, if you look at what's going on in the world, it looks like Russia is getting ready to do a ground invasion of the Ukraine, which, by the way, has still not been allowed to join NATO. And NATO has announced that it will not take any military defense action in the event of a conflict against Ukraine. Who are the people that run NATO? Why are we even still involved in this organization, folks? I mean, you got to ask yourself. Everywhere you look today, whether it's in the movies or on TV and books or even in the mainstream media, we find unending talk about aliens and space travel. But the truth is, we haven't been back to the moon in almost 50 years. The last time a human being set foot on the moon was December of 1972. That was the last successful manned space expedition the United States has done, except for some trips to dock with the International Space Station, which is really in fairly low orbit around the Earth. Now, why do you suppose that is? Almost 50 years, folks. Why haven't we gone back to the moon or sent a manned expedition to another planet in our solar system? They're always talking about it, NASA, the news, the government, but they never do anything. Why do you suppose that is? Well, I believe there are several reasons why we haven't been back to the moon. First, it's very difficult, and it's very dangerous, and very expensive. Not that our government gives a hoot about spending our money, don't misunderstand me, but I believe the government doesn't want another space disaster like the Challenger mission, which blew up shortly after takeoff in 1986. We are using basically the same propulsion systems that existed back in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, and they're not very good. You strap a little capsule onto a huge container of fuel, and you shoot it into space, and you hope for the best. Now, don't get me wrong, I know we're a little more advanced than that, but not a lot. Another reason I believe we haven't been back to the moon is that there's nothing there. You know, they first thought it would be strategic to have a military presence on the moon. But it became evident over the years that everything militarily that could be done from the moon could also be done by satellites without the risk of manned space flights. But still, NASA continues to talk and talk and talk about going back to the moon and going to Mars and going to space beyond and other solar systems and galaxies. NASA just recently announced that they're postponing our return to the moon, which was supposed to happen next year, until 2025. I wonder why that is. Let me ask you a serious question, friend. Why would anybody want to go and live on the moon? You know, they've been selling that idea for years and years and years. You know there's no atmosphere there, right? You would basically be living in a single wide trailer in a place where you can't breathe outside of the controlled environment. And Mars is even worse. Why would anyone want to go to Mars? You know the temperatures on Mars range from 90 degrees Fahrenheit to minus 225 degrees Fahrenheit. What are you going to do up there? The atmosphere of Mars is made up of 90% carbon dioxide. You can't breathe that stuff. I mean, you get a whiff of that and you're dead. Friends, it's all a sham. It's a hoax meant to make you think space travel is right around the corner. But it's not. If you want to know what is really going on with space travel and aliens and all the hype going on out there in the news media about it, you need to read my book. It's called Angels or Aliens. You can get it anywhere books are sold. Angels or Aliens. Get the truth about space travel and extraterrestrial life on other planets. Folks, I'll give you a preview. It's all about the big lie and confusion of these end times. Again, politicians are trying to pass another outlandish spending bill. They want about another $2 trillion, which if they get this bill passed, the money will go back to them through their cronies and supporters and will eventually, I believe, cause a collapse economically of this country, which, by the way, I also believe the globalists and their political puppets hope that they can use to take this country over. I believe they want to destroy the Constitution, friends. They want to turn the United States into a socialistic, communist country, similar to those that we're watching overseas. Could you believe what's going on in Australia right now, happening here in this country? If you don't know what I'm talking about, just Google Australia. The place has gone nuts. It's like a prison state. If the globalists get this to happen, and they are able to form this socialistic, communistic country, they're going to control it. And friends, this isn't just a Democrat Party thing. I'm not talking parties here. 13 Republicans voted for the $1.7 trillion infrastructure bill that's a total joke. Infrastructure bill. Do you remember the last one? Do you remember the last infrastructure bill? It was part of Obama's stimulus. There wasn't any infrastructure. They didn't spend the money on fixing the roads or the bridges. That's what they're telling us they want to do with this money now. It's baloney, friends. And on top of all of this chaos going on in this country, on January 6th of next year, which is just a month or so away, we may see millions of police, firefighters, healthcare workers, military people, and a multitude of corporate individuals, private corporate individuals, all put out of their jobs because they won't get the COVID shots. If that happens, I'm afraid we're going to see a shutdown unlike anything we've ever seen before. On top of all of that, the hidden dynasty of politics is driving this country farther and farther into debt and pushing towards the liberals' New Green Deal. I mean, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, she's, I believe, out of the state of New York, representative out of the state of New York. She recently stated that fossil fuels, those things that run this country, she says fossil fuels and the future of humanity are not compatible. Friends, ask your millennial children or grandchildren if they're willing to give up their cars. Ask them if they're willing to give up driving altogether. Ask them if they're willing to give up their cell phones and their computers to get off of petroleum, because that's exactly what it would take. And that would just be the beginning. We're talking about no more airplanes. We're talking about, it's crazy. It's important that our children understand this. And I'll bet I know what their answer would be if anybody ever gave them the straight information and told them the truth about what this is going to entail, this Green New Deal. As the left pushes us closer and closer to a socialistic state, it seems like maybe some of the sheep are beginning to wake up. I can only pray that that's true, beloved. But there is a glimmer of hope out there that I heard this last week. It comes in the form of a recent poll, which has historically been very liberal-leaning, so you'd expect it to be even modified a little bit. But this poll showed that 25% of the people that voted for Joe Biden in the national election now regret it. My hope is that it's not too late. One thing that has become very clear to me, friends, the hidden dynasties, all of them, they want what is happening in this country to happen. Now, if you let that sink in a little, I believe you're going to begin to see what's really going on out there. And the money people of the world, let's call them the elite or globalists, they are who really are driving this whole thing. They own the politicians. Don't kid yourself. Through lobbyists, through donations, they own a huge majority of the politicians. And if they get their way, the globalists and the elites, it won't be very long before they own you and me, friends. This group of elitists that control the hidden dynasties are practicing political cultism. And if you look at what they are doing, it comes right out of the playbook of how you start and build and run a cult. The first thing that a cult does is separate and polarize other people from their people that are not in the cult. They want them separated. That's exactly what happens when you go around accusing everyone of a different political belief than your own of being racist, or pitting the vaccinated people against the unvaccinated, or pro-mask people against anti-masks. Friends, this is the purpose of critical race theory. They want to separate and polarize the people in this country, plain and simple. The next thing that is always true in the development of a cult is that all questioning or any type of doubt or dissent is discouraged and or punished, severely sometimes. Look at the cancel culture that we're living in today. It's exactly what's going on. The cultist group is elitist, claiming a special exalted status for itself and its leaders, of course, and their members. There are examples of this all over the political left today. But for just one little example that's very easy to see, that I'm sure most of you has registered in your mind already, look at the elitist liberal leaders and how they make laws for us but refuse to live by them personally. From wearing masks and other COVID-related garbage to their refusal to show any environmental consideration in their travel, especially when they go to global warming affairs. I mean, they use highly polluting means of travel like private jets, gas-guzzling SUVs, they drive around in limos. Friends, they don't think you're watching. The next thing a cult group does is it creates and it promotes the idea that it's us against them. With today's left, it's us against Trump and anyone who supports him. In today's radical left, the leadership is not accountable to any authority. Think about it. There's so many examples out there of these people, from Hillary Clinton and Hunter Biden, Lois Lerner, James Comey, other people in the FBI and the administration. I mean, you could go on all day with examples. They are never held accountable. Also, cults harbor this belief that the end justifies the means, and it uses shame and guilt to control their membership. If you think there might be something fishy going on about the vaccines or something fishy about global warming, and yet they're buying oceanfront properties and flying in private jets and driving in limousines, you're a science denier. You're dirty and despicable, and you're killing people because you won't get poked or you won't wear a mask. We've been hearing it for months, friends. And finally, cults are preoccupied with making money. They're preoccupied with bringing in new membership. And they demand blind loyalty from their members. This is the liberal left. Need I say any more? You know, at this point, we begin to see the line between politics and the economy starting to become really blurred to the point that it's difficult to separate the two. As I said in the beginning, the hidden dynasty of politics is practicing political cultism. And most of our politicians from both parties are bought and paid for by the pharmaceutical companies and the wealthy globalists across this globe. And those people are the real leaders of this cult. these wealthy globalists and the pharmaceutical companies, the people that run them, who are now in control of the hidden dynasty of the economy. And in our next postscript, we're going to closely examine this hidden dynasty of the economy, who's in control of it, and what their ultimate plan for this world really is. Until next time, beloved, God bless you and your family. Thank you for all of your support, all of your prayers. Remember, we're praying for you. Please pray for us. Please like our videos wherever you're watching them. Share them with your friends, your family. That's the best way to help spread the word. And you know something that's very important. Spreading the word is our job. I mean, God told us to go sow seeds. And how do you sow seeds, friend? You got to be talking the word to your friends and your family and your children especially. Because it's up to us. You know why? Because the elect will forge the path to the Lord in these end times.